Okay, today we're going to be reviewing Chapter 5 using household measures in pharmacy calculations. Next, we will actually talk about, we have three sections: 5.1 household measure, 5.2 oral doses, and 5.3 temperature measurements. So what we'll do is we'll do these in three different recordings. 5.1 will be the household measures. Um, so we have our learning objectives, which I'll let you guys read through. Okay, so starting with the 5.1 section, converting household volume measures, you're going to be converting, of course, between household measure and the metric system. And of course, the household measure is going to be a system of measure used in homes, particularly in your kitchen. So it's going to be measures that you're familiar with. Converting, of course, body weight. Household measure, of course, measuring volume using the household measure is less accurate than using other systems because the measuring utensils can vary in size. However, this system, of course, is often used by patients when administering drugs at home. So your household volume measure may be used in community pharmacy practice when dispensing drugs. Of course, that will be administered in the patient's home because patients may not have other measuring devices at home. Okay. Um, but also, when a patient may, their description may say take 1 teaspoon 3 times a day, usually if they do not want them to actually use a teaspoon that you eat with, usually the pharmacy, if they do not have one, will give them a correct measuring utensil, either a measuring cup, measuring spoon, with the accurate household measures on it, usually indicated in teaspoons and also in milliliters as well. So household measure is a system of measure used in homes, particularly in kitchens in the United States. Units of measure for volume include teaspoonful, tablespoonful, cup, pint, quart, and gallon. Units for weight are, of course, pound and ounce. Here are some common household measures that you do need to memorize. Okay, so 3 teaspoons, of course, is equal to 1 tablespoon. 2 tablespoons is going to be equal to 1 fluid ounce. 8 fluid ounces, of course, is equal to 1 cup. 2 cups is equal to 1 pint, and 2 pints is going to be equal to 1 quart, and 4 quarts is going to be equal to 1 gallon. Another one that I find is easy for students to remember is if they know the milliliters of everything. Um, on the next few slides, we are going to go over the milliliters with everything, but since we've already talked about teaspoons, we'll go ahead and put up here 1 teaspoon equals 5 milliliters. 1 tablespoon is equal to 15 milliliters. And of course, you have 1 ounce is equal to 30 milliliters. So make sure you remember those as well. Because usually when it's dealing with teaspoons, tablespoons, and ounces, for me, the easiest way to do everything is in milliliters. Okay, so it makes it a little bit easier in the long run. Some of your questions in this chapter will be asking for it in teaspoons, some to ask for it in ounces. So, but as long as you come up with the correct answer, it doesn't matter how you come up with it as long as you get the correct answer. So there's different versions of how you can do this. And this just gives you a visual of the equivalence of 3 teaspoons. So you can see the 3 small teaspoons equals 1 tablespoon, and the 2 tablespoons equals 1 fluid ounce. 8 ounces, so 8 ounce cups here, or 8 1 ounce cups, excuse me, is equal to 1 cup. 2 cups equals 1 pint. 2 pints equals 1 quart, and 4 quarts equals 1 gallon. So it is helpful sometimes to give people that visual when working with the household measures. To avoid misreading C, for the C with a line above it or 0, do not abbreviate cup. Okay, so when you're referring to cups, you always just write it all out. So weight equivalents, 1 pound is going to be equal to 16 ounces. Okay. Also remember, in the apothecary pound and the household pound is different. The apothecary pound is going to be 12 ounces. The household pound is 16 ounces. So make sure that you remember that if it is asking you, if it's in apothecary, it's going to be 12. If it asks for it in household pounds, it's 16 ounces. Okay, so ounces, of course, is used to signify the weights, and remember they are different in each one. Household pounds is the one that is most commonly used. Okay. It is important though to memorize all these charts, because when you go to take your state board, um, or your if you want to take the national test, you do not get any of these charts with you. So these are things that you need to memorize. So the chart that we just went over with the, how many teaspoons is a tablespoon and how many pints is a quart, things like that. Make sure you have those memorized before you go in and take your state board test, before you take the final test in here as well. Um, and I tell students all the time, if you are having trouble with a couple of them, review it before you go in. When they hand you the test, you can doodle on the side of it, or they may give you a scrap piece of paper, and then you can write things down real quickly before you forget them. So like all systems, units of household volume measure can be converted to larger or smaller units. So if you were looking at this question here, how many tablespoons are in 2 cups? So we know you just think about what you know already from your chart of medication. So you know with 2 tablespoons you have 1 ounce, and 8 ounces equals 1 cup. Okay, so begin by noting those appropriate equivalences, what we've already just went over. 2 tablespoons equals 1 ounce, 1 cup equals 8 ounces. Okay, so what you would need to do is second, the solution, of course, is using the dimensional analysis method. And as I'm going to do an extension of it, where before we was just doing 1 or 2 crosses. So what you want to do is extend your cross out. You want to know how many tablespoons. So we're going to end up with tablespoons, but we know we have 2 cups. So 2 cups is going to be here. We always write it out. Again, nothing goes here. If you have cups up here, you got to have cups down there. So we know that 1 cup equals 8 ounces. So we're trying to get to tablespoons, so we just keep going. So we add another cross. So we're going to ignore the 2 cups and the 1 cup, and we'll go, if we have ounces up here, we'll have ounces across from it. Okay, and we need tablespoons, so we know that there's a certain amount of ounces that equals a tablespoon, so we can stop right there. Okay, so we know that we have 1 ounce equals 2 tablespoons. Okay, so then all you do is you multiply across. 2 times 8 times 2 is 32 over 1. Okay, and the cups cancel each other out. You can cancel out ounces. And then you have tablespoons left, so we know this equals 32 divided by 1 is 32 tablespoons. Kind of squeeze that on there. Okay. So when converting several equivalences using the dimensional analysis, it is helpful to make a notation of the units you want in the final answer. That's what I did at the end. Here we are sorting the solution with x tablespoons because we want the answer to be in the number of tablespoons. And we'll do another example here. How many teaspoon doses are in 3 cups of medication? So begin by noting the appropriate equivalences. Okay, so you go back into your chart and you know a couple of equivalences to help you. You know 3 teaspoons equals a tablespoon. You know 2 tablespoons equals 1 fluid ounce. And you know 8 ounces equals 1 cup. Okay, so what I'm going to do is you're going to make your cross. Okay, we're going to make a long one. So we know we're trying to find pretty much how many 1 teaspoon doses are in 3 cups. So we're going to find out how many x teaspoons are in 1 cup, or 3 cups. So you know this is going to be x teaspoons. and we know 3 cups, so 3 cups would go here. Okay, cups is here, cups goes down here. And there's nothing in this corner. Okay, so you know from your equivalences here, you have 1 cup equals 8 ounces. Okay. Okay. But we're not at teaspoons yet. We're if we stop here, we'd just be at ounces. So then we're going to add another cross on. You have ounces here, you have to have ounces here. Okay. And then you look into your chart and you know how many ounces could equal a tablespoon. 1 ounce. Let me put this over here. 1 ounce equals 2 tablespoons. But we haven't stopped at teaspoons yet. Okay, so just keep going with your cross. So we know if we have tablespoons here, we're going to have tablespoons down here. And we know in our chart that 1 tablespoon equals 3 teaspoons. Okay, so we have teaspoons here, and that's what we're looking for. So that's what our X is, so we can stop. Again, cups marks out, cross out or cancel each other out. Ounces cancel each other out. And tablespoons cancel each other out. And we can stop at teaspoons. So then all you do is you multiply across and then divide. So I'm going to put it down here. 3 times 8 times 2 times 3 would be 144. 1 times 1 times 1 on the bottom is 1. Okay, 144 divided by 1 is 144. And you was looking for teaspoons, that's where we stopped, so it would be teaspoons. Okay. Oops, I went too far, excuse me. So next we're going to be converting from household to metric for measuring within the pharmacy. So metric is used more often in pharmacy. So we have another table to memorize. And I like this table the best because what we did earlier, we were like working between teaspoons and tablespoons and then going to ounces. But sometimes if you just know the milliliters of everything, you can do a lot of the figuring in your head. So you don't have to make that cross out as long, that cross. Okay, where we kept adding it on. So what I'll do is I'll kind of do a little bit of figuring in my head, and the part I don't know, I'll do the conversion too. Okay, you do it the way you like or easiest for you. But 1 teaspoon equals 5 milliliters. 1 tablespoon equals 15 milliliters. 1 ounce equals 30 milliliters. 1 cup equals 240. 1 pint equals 480. 1 quart equals 960 milliliters. And 1 gallon equals 3,840 milliliters. So the volume, of course, held by a household teaspoon may vary, but a true teaspoon equals 5 milliliters. So that's why in the pharmacy, and especially in the community pharmacy, if a doctor writes a prescription for 1 teaspoon for a patient to give, we will give them an equivalence. Usually it could be in a dropper, it could be in a measuring spoon or a cup, but somewhere where it will state 5 milliliters and 1 teaspoon both on there. Again, here you have the volume. 1 fluid ounce equals 30 milliliters and 1 pint equals 480 milliliters. So there are actually, this is the rounded off version. Okay, so when you have 1 ounce equals 30 milliliters, that is the rounded version. There are actually 29.57 milliliters in 1 ounce, but 30 milliliters is typically used because it's easiest that way. So when you're working in the pharmacy, when packaging a pint, companies will typically use 473 because they're using the accurate amount. Okay, so 1 pint, the accurate amount is 473 rather than the 480. So when you're working in a pharmacy, when you see a bottle, it says 473, that's because they use the accurate amount and not the rounded version. So with weight, it is the same. So 1 ounce equals 30 grams, 1 pound equals 454. This is the rounded version. And 2.2 pounds equals 1 kilogram. So, but they are actually, in weight, Um, the accurate grams is 28.34952 instead of the 30. The 30 is the rounded version that they use. So the 28.34952 grams is in the avoirdupois ounce. However, we often use the rounded up version, which is 30 grams. It is common practice to use 454 grams as the equivalent for a pound, but if you wanted the accurate amount, it is 453.6. And what they did is they took the 28.35 grams and times it by 16 of them to make 16 ounces, and it's 453.6 is the accurate. The rounded version is 454 grams per pound. Okay, so this is showing you the visual um, of the everything. So you have, of course, 1 teaspoon equals 5 milliliters, just to show you the visual. 1 tablespoon equals 15 milliliters. 1 ounce equals 30 milliliters. 1 pint equals 480 milliliters. 1 cup equals 240 milliliters. And 1 quart equals 960 milliliters. And 1 gallon equals 3,840 milliliters. So if we wanted to do a problem here, a conversion example, a patient is to purchase a 12 fluid ounce bottle of antacid. The patient is to take 15 milliliters before each meal and at bedtime. How many doses does the bottle contain? So you want to remember your chart. So begin by noting the appropriate equivalences. You had, of course, your 1 fluid ounce equals 30 milliliters. So the 0.5 fluid ounces equals 15 milliliters. And your 12 ounce equals 360 milliliters. So you want to make note of that first. So then, what you want to do first is you want to me, it's easier to do everything in milliliters. So what I would do is I would take the 12 ounces and convert it to milliliters. So if you have 12 ounces, you want to convert it to milliliters. If you have ounces here, you have ounces here. And we know that 1 ounce equals 30 milliliters. If you then I just cross multiply and divide, so 12 times 30 would equal 360 milliliters. And divide by 1. So what we've done, 360 milliliters. So what we're going to do first is we've taken that 12 ounces and we've turned it into 360 milliliters. Okay. So step 2, of course, is going to be using that dimensional analysis method and the matrix system both. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the ratio proportion. So if you have X doses, is what we're trying to find. And we found our 12 ounce bottle. So we're going to try to find out how many doses are in a 360 milliliters. So we've converted that. So we have 360 here. And we know that the patient is to take 15 milliliters before each meal and at bedtime. So they're taking 15 milliliters. It's going to be 1 dose. So 1 dose is equal to 15 milliliters. Okay. Then you're going to cross multiply. X times 15, whatever you multiply the X by, always goes on the bottom. 360 divided by 1. Okay. Then you take 360 and divide it by 15, and you're going to get 24 doses. So then, how many milliliters are in 1 teaspoon? Well, that is a given because we know 1 teaspoon is equal to 5 milliliters. And of course, 1 ounce is equal to 30 milliliters. And a lot of times on some of the state board tests, it'll ask you for something very simple that you don't even have to convert. If you have those tables memorized, it may just ask something simple that you can just figure up in your head real quick, like 1 ounce is equal to 30 milliliters. Sometimes you may have to do that conversion in the cross and have it done several times. So if you have a 1 pound jar of ointment available, you are instructed to use this stock to fill smaller jars with 20 grams of ointment each. How many jars can you fill? So you want to remember that, of course, that 1 pound equals 454 grams. Okay. Also remember that you have 30 grams equals 1 ounce, and 454 grams equals 1 pound. So we're using the rounded version. So if you're looking at your problem here, you have a 1 pound jar of ointment available. You are instructed to use this stock to fill a smaller jars of 20 grams of ointment each. How many jars can you fill? Well, we can do this one already in ratio proportion. So if you look here, you have X jars. And what we did is we took the 1 pound jar and converted it to grams. And that's what you have here. And in one jar, it says that you're going to fill it smaller jars with 20 grams of ointment in each. So one jar is going to be able to fill 20 grams. So that's where we get the 1 jar per 20 grams. Okay. Then all we did was cross multiply, and you have 454 times 1 is 454, and whatever you multiply the x by always goes on the bottom. So 20 times x would be 20. And when you divide that, it comes out to be 22.7 jars, or you're going to fill 22 jars full. Okay. And I'm going to skip through those because some of them, to me, is just easiest. Do whichever is easiest for you. There are some people who find it easier to use the dimensional analysis method, and then some people like the ratio proportion method. I do a mixture. If I know the 3 parts, I will do the ratio proportion, and anything I have to convert, I use the dimensional analysis method, or what I call the cross. Okay, so do what's easiest for you. Okay, again, I will show you the way I like to do it, because if I try to show it to you in a different form, I get confused. So on your problem sets on page 121, and we'll look at number 1 and number 2. We'll do those. So number 1, you're going to convert the following given volumes within the household measure system. Again, this is on page 121. So we're taking, for 1, 8 ounces, and we're wanting to know the pints. Okay, so with this one, okay, if you've memorized your chart, you know that 2 cups is equal to 1 pint. So we can just do our cross right here. 8 ounces here, 8 ounces here. Okay, and we know that, or we're going to do cups, sorry. Oh, excuse me. Let me just mark this out. I apologize. I put ounces and it's supposed to be in cups. 8 cups equals pints. My apologies. Okay, so then we're going to do a cross. If we have cups here, we're going to have cups down here. Okay, so we know that 2 cups equals 1 pint. Okay, so then you just multiply across and divide. 8 divided by 2. 8 divided by 2 is going to be 4, so it equals 4 pints. So we'll mark cups cross each other out. Okay, so if you look at the top here, you know that the 8 cups is going to be equal to 4 pints. If we do number 2, it is wanting to know 3 pints is equal to how many ounces? This is one we're going to have to work out a little bit further. So I'm going to put the cross down here. Okay. So if we know we have the 3 pints, And if we have pints up here, we have to have pints down here. Okay. And we know that milliliters, we have 480 milliliters equals 1 pint. Okay. And then we can cross our pints out because they take each other out. So we're starting over again here. But we need ounces so we can't stop. So if we have milliliters here, you have milliliters here. That we know we have tons of things we can use for milliliters per ounce. So if we know if we have 30 milliliters, that's going to equal 1 ounce. Okay. So now all you do is multiply across. 3 times 480 times 1 is 1,440. And then you're going to divide it by 30 because you have 1 times 30. Okay. When you divide that out, it comes to 48. And we know it's ounces because their milliliters here will cross each other out. These ounces, and that's what we were looking for. So we have 48 ounces. So 3 pints equals 48 ounces. Okay, let's do another one here. We'll do quite a few of these just to kind of give you some practice. Some of them will be longer than others. They are shorter cuts. I'm just doing it according to the way the charts are. I may later on go in and kind of throw some shortcuts in there. But do it, if you can figure some of them up, from your brain before you do the conversions, you can do that. 6 cups equals how many teaspoons? Okay. So we're going to do this one, and we know we have no teaspoons per cup, so we're going to start out with 6 cups. Okay. And if we have cups here, we have to have cups down here. And so I like to go from cups to ounces. Okay, so we know that 1 cup equals 8 ounces. Cups are going to cross each other out. Ounces here, so we're looking for teaspoons. Have ounces here and need ounces here. And then we know, of course, we're trying to get to teaspoons, so I would go, if you wanted to go to ounces to tablespoons, you could do that, or you could go from ounces to milliliters, and then from milliliters to teaspoons. Okay, so that's why I was saying there's different ways you can do it. But I'm just going to go up the chart. So you have 1 ounce equals 2 tablespoons. Okay, if you have 2 tablespoons, we're not at teaspoons yet. So if you tablespoons here, you'll have to have tablespoons here. Okay, and we know that 1 tablespoon will be equal to 3 teaspoons. Again, you could have missed the step there by going to ounces or milliliters if you want to, but again, cross out your ounces, cross each other out, tablespoons cross each other out, and that leaves us with teaspoons, so we can stop. So 6 times 8 times 2 times 3 is going to be 288. And 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 288 divided by 1 is 288 teaspoons. So 6 cups is going to be equal to 288 teaspoons. Okay, next we'll do a couple of the easier ones. Number 8, we're going to try to get to 80 milliliters is equal to blank tablespoons. So if we have 80 milliliters, we know we are across, nothing goes here, milliliters up here, milliliters will be at the bottom. I'm doing the dimensional analysis method. And we do know the number of tablespoons. 1 tablespoon is going to be equal to 30 milliliters. 15 milliliters. So 80 times 1 is 80. And then 15 times nothing is 15. 80 divided by 15 is going to be 5.33 teaspoons or tablespoons. And then you could put that in a 5 1/3 if you wanted to, but you don't have to. So the 80 divided by 15 is 5.33 tablespoons. 80 milliliters, is, if you converted that over into tablespoons, would make 5.33 tablespoons. Next, this is one I was telling you that I think you could just do in your head. But if you look at number 9, it's 6 ounces equals how many milliliters? Okay, if you know that 1 ounce equals 30 milliliters, then you could just times 6 times 30, figure 180. If you want to just write it out, you can do that as well. That's one that you can do in your head, but until you get used to doing them all the time, you may want to write it down on paper. So we know 1 ounce is equal to 30 milliliters. Ounces will cross each other out. These are milliliters. 6 times 30 would be 180 divided by 1, which would give you 180 milliliters. So 6 ounces equals 180 milliliters. Again, you can do that with your pints as well. But sometimes you can multiply across, sometimes you have to divide. So if we look at number, actually I'll do number 11. If you look at number 11 in your book, it's wanting you to convert 800 milliliters to pints. Okay, and in our chart we tell you that 1 pint is equal to 480 milliliters. So if we was to write this down, do our little cross, nothing here, milliliters at the top, down here across from it would be milliliters. And we were looking for pints, so we know that 1 pint is going to be equal to 480 milliliters. So we could just multiply across, and 480 times nothing is 480. And 800 divided by 480 would be 1.67 pints. Okay, so those are some examples for that. Next we'll go over to converting some body weight. So drug manufacturers often provide recommended dose based on a specific dose in milligrams per kilogram of the patient's body weight. So if a patient's weight is documented in pounds, the weight will need to be converted to kilograms. So just to give you a visual, you have the 2.2 pounds equals 1 kilogram. A patient weighs, of course, 134 pounds. What is the patient's weight in kilograms? So first, remember that and I'm just going to use the dimensional analysis method for this one because it's very simple. We don't have our 3 parts to do a ratio proportion, so we just need to convert. So we know we have 134 pounds. And we want to, and I always tell people with pounds, sometimes you might want to circle it because you don't want to think that that is a 1. So 134 pounds, but if you have pounds up there, you're going to have pounds down here. Okay, and we know that 1 kilogram is equal to 2.2 pounds. So then you're just going to multiply across. First you can cross out your pounds. 134 times 1 is 134. You're going to divide it by 2.2 because 2.2 times nothing is 2.2. 134 divided by 2.2 is going to equal 60.90 kilograms. Another example, if a patient in the neonatal ICU weighs 1,250 grams, how many pounds is this? Well, we also know in our chart that 1 pound equals 454 grams. So, you have the 1,250 grams. If you have grams here, you're going to have grams here. And you want to know how much it is in pounds. Okay, so we have grams. You can type those off. 1 gram, or 454 grams, is going to be equal to 1 pound. So then you multiply across and divide. 1,250 times 1 is 1,250. 454 times nothing is 454. Okay, then you're going to divide, and it comes up to be 2.75 pounds. Okay, so if you was to do some problem sets from 5.1 in your notes, in your back of your book, again, these are on page, let's see here. They're actually on page 122 in your book. And if you look at number 54, this is problem number 54. Okay. It says, I'm not going to write it out, a prescription states that a patient is to take 1/2 teaspoon of furosemide oral solution daily. Using the furosemide label shown above, how many milligrams are in a dose? So we know that 1/2 teaspoon equals, if we want to put in a decimal, 0.5 teaspoons. Okay, so you don't want to use a fraction doing conversions or ratio proportions, because it's you want to always put it in decimal form. Makes it much easier. So that I'm going to put this up in our ratio proportion, and I'm going to show you how to set that ratio proportion and then convert when you need to convert it. Okay, so if you look at your problem, you know you want X milligrams, and you have in 1/2 teaspoon. And you have in your label here 10 milligrams per 1 milliliter. So when it says per milliliter, it's always going to be 1. So you have your 10 milligrams per 1 milliliter. And if you look here, you always want to have weights and liquids or volume, or liquids and weights on the same level. So at the top you have both weights, and then the both weight units are right, milligram, milligram. Okay. On the bottom you have 2 liquids, one's in teaspoons O and one is in milliliters. So what we need to do, I like to work better in milliliters, I just think it's easier. So we're going to take the 1/2 teaspoon and convert it to milliliters. So over here on the side, I could figure it up in my head and it's 2.5, but if you don't want to figure it up in your head, 0.5 milliliters, teaspoons. And you want milliliters, so you know that 1 teaspoon is equal to 5 milliliters. So then you take your calculator and you multiply across 0.5 times 5 is going to be 2.5 divided by 1, which makes it 2.5. Okay, so what we did, we just did our little conversion onto the side, and now we can take that and we can put it in milliliters, which would be 2.5 milliliters. Okay, now we have both units the same on the bottom and both units the same on the top. So then we're going to cross multiply. Whatever you multiply the x by always goes on the bottom. X times 1 is 1. 10 times 2.5 is 25. So then your answer will come out to be 25 milligrams. So there's 25 milligrams, of course, in a dose. This one will be another example from number 56 in your book, and I will read that off to you. Number 56 says a prescription states that a patient is to take 10 milligrams of Zurette daily. Using the provided label, calculate the dose, equivalent dose measured in teaspoonfuls. Okay, so we're going to write down what we already know and set it up in ratio and proportion. We know by looking at the label, you have 1 milligram per 1 milliliter. So I'm going to start with that first. 1 milligram per 1 milliliter. So now I've got weights on top, liquids on the bottom. So then over here we look in our problem, and again it said to take 10 milligrams of the medicine. So we know if we have milligrams on the top, we're going to put our 10 milligrams here. And it's asking for an X teaspoons. Okay, So next what you can do is excuse me, teaspoons. I'm going to figure it out in milliliters. I think I went this way to show you how you could do it using all milliliters, but you want it in X teaspoons. So we're going to find out what it is in milliliters and then convert the answer. But you could have converted first, which I started to do. So 1 times X always goes on the bottom, which is 1. 10 times 1 is 10. So you know that 10 milligrams is going to be equivalent um, to 10 milliliters. Okay, so now they want the answer in teaspoons. And if you remember, you could figure this part up in your head. You know, 1 teaspoon is equal to 5 milliliters. So if you had double that, it would be 2 teaspoons. But if you don't want to figure it in your head, you know, our answer was 10 milliliters. So if you want to figure it up and convert your answer into teaspoons, you could do that. We know that we have 1 teaspoon equals to 5 milliliters. It comes out to 10 times 1 is 10, divided by 5 is 2, so it'd be 2 teaspoons. And that's all I did is I just converted that 10 milliliters over to 2 teaspoons. If you wanted to, though, you could have made your X teaspoons and converted at 1 milliliters into teaspoons if you wanted to do it that way. Okay. You can convert first and then come out with the right answer at the end, or like I did in the last problem, or you can convert the answer at the very end. Okay. That's up to you which way you would like to do it. I'm just trying to show you different ways of doing it, and then you can find out what works best for you. Everybody does math a little bit differently, and one thing that works for me may not work for you, or vice versa. So I will do another problem in your book off page, it's on page 122, and we're just converting the following patient weights from pounds to kilograms. So if they weigh 3.5 pounds, how much would they weigh in kilograms? So we know if you have pounds on the top here, you have to have pounds down here. Nothing here. Kilograms here. So we know 1 kilogram is equal to 2.2 pounds. And then you multiply across 3.5 times 1 is 3.5 divided by 2.2. And then 3.5 divided by 2.2 would equal 1.59, which you can round to 1.6 kilograms. Usually with pounds and kilograms, you usually will round to the 10th. Okay. And that is it for the first 5.1 section. And I will record the next 5.2 oral doses separately in a different video.